Hello everyone, that Manga Kid here to give my review of Sweet Poolside by Shuzo Oshimi. This is the last of his works that we were waiting on that have been announced. There's a couple other of his older stuff, I think, that has not been released in English yet, but hopefully at some point one day we will get those kind of last little bits of his catalog. But Sweet Poolside is a series I never, ever thought we would get in English. So I was surprised when this and Avant-Garde Yumiko were announced, but I'm glad that Oshimi has enough English fans, I guess, now, who will pick up his works that publishers deemed it worthwhile to release something like this. So Sweet Poolside follows our main character here, Ota. He is in middle school and he's completely hairless. He has no body hair. He hasn't really hit puberty yet. And they're doing swimming in... I think he's on the swim team, actually. It's not gym class. He's on the swim team. So his peers really make fun of him and really embarrass him publicly about his lack of body hair, particularly on his genitals. And he's just really self-conscious about it. In comes Goto, this beautiful classmate who is also on the swim team. She is very hairy. She has a lot of body hair. And obviously she's very self-conscious about that. Being a young female surrounded by other girls who have no body hair, she is really self-conscious about her body hair. So, as you can imagine, the two of them cross paths. And they're jealous of each other because they have what the other person wants. This turns into an interesting dynamic between the two of them. I'm not going to spoil what's going on because it is just a one single volume story that you can read yourself to find out what happens. But all in all, as with pretty much all Oshimi works, it is a story about puberty, it is a story about sexuality, it is a story about self-acceptance and learning about yourself, and yeah. There's definitely people who will be uncomfortable with this story. That's fine. It's not for you. Great. I personally really like the way that Oshimi tells stories about puberty and, you know, kind of sexual awakenings and all that kind of stuff. I think that it's done in an entertaining way. It's comedic and it's ridiculous. And I think that his author's notes at the end of his volumes really kind of lend it themselves to figuring out who this person is, who writes all of this manga. Yeah, I think that it really lends some humanity and like insight into why he writes these kind of stories and like where he's coming from when he does that, as opposed to just being like, oh, this is a perverse thing that I'm reading and whatever. You know, I think that his author's notes do really kind of lend themselves to be like, oh, that's why you created this character, or oh, that's why you had them in this particular situation, or whatever. At the end of the day, I enjoy Oshimi. I'm going to pick up whatever I can get my hands on of his. And Sweet Poolside is no exception. I'm really stoked that we have this and Avant-Garde Yumiko now, because these were the two that I really, really was hoping that we would one day get in English. So, yeah. If you've read this, I'd like to hear your thoughts, whether you liked it or didn't like it. It's definitely one that is not for everybody. I don't think there is ever a scenario where I would introduce this to somebody in my life and be like, you should read this. I don't think that there's a scenario where I'm recommending this to somebody I know in person, because I don't need people to be, you know, like, what the hell is wrong with you? So I feel that way about most Oshimi works. I don't think that I would necessarily, particularly to somebody who doesn't read manga, but just generally, I don't think there's any of his works that I'd be like, you, person in my life, that I care about your opinion of me, I think you should read this. Uh, yeah, I'm just gonna keep them to myself. Those will go on my shelf. I don't lend out my books anyway, but yeah, do with that information what you will. I would say read the description of this to find out if this is for you. I would say if you've not read an Oshimi work, this is not the one to start with. I would suggest maybe Happiness, Blood on the Tracks. I love Flowers of Evil. I think that's a good place to start too. That's where I started with Oshimi. But yeah, I think that this is not the one to start with. This is the one you buy because you're an Oshimi fan, not because, I mean, maybe there's someone out there who's looking at this and they're like, this is my jam. This is what I want in a manga. But for the most part, I think you're probably picking this up because you already like Oshimi. So if you're watching this video, it's because probably, again, you already like Oshimi and you're going to buy it already anyway. But I am curious to know your thoughts on this one in particular. And if you are an Oshimi fan, you've read a lot of his works like I have, I'm curious to see where this one kind of falls in your kind of ranking system of titles of his. I personally think this one is a lot of fun. I think it's short and sweet. Like Avant-Garde Yumiko, it is a fun, quick read that gets across what he likes to portray in his manga in a shorter format. I think that the older art style is charming. Obviously, his new and improved art is just stunning, but I think that it's really interesting to, look back and see where his art kind of started. So, yeah, I do recommend this to you if you're an Oshimi fan and you haven't picked it up already for whatever reason. But yeah, thanks for watching.